Good morning. This is Andrea Latuski, Director of Education at the American Fraternal Alliance. Welcome to our fourth webinar in our Fraternal Branding Education series on segmentation. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Just some logistics before we get started. We are going to record the webinar. Early next week, you'll receive a link to the recording and a copy of the slides. We encourage you to share the recording and materials with anyone else in your organization. All of the phone lines have been muted for our webinar this morning. If you have any questions, please use the chat feature on your computer screen throughout the event. We will have time at the end for a Q&A. Today, our speakers from the American Fraternal Alliance are Jeff Mitchell, Director of Public Affairs, and Taylor Conrad, Membership and Marketing Coordinator. We're going to get started right away with Taylor Conrad. Good morning, everyone. Today's webinar will focus on segmentation to discover which segments of the market are most receptive to the fraternal message. We will also take a quick look at how consumers viewed the creative concepts that were developed as part of finalizing the brand assets that were available to you in the branding website and in the Dropbox. To start out, we're going to spend just a minute or two discussing how Maddox Douglas conducted the research and developed the methodology for this segment of the program. Then we'll meet the segments, take a look at the consumer response and recommendations for the creative, and finally we'll spend a good bit of time discussing the market conditions. So discussing the market segments is a fascinating but definitely a complex area of research. So I want to urge you to remember that these webinars are meant to be collaborative. If you have a question, please use the chat function. And so if everyone's ready, I'm going to hand it off to Jeff, and he's going to talk about the methodology.
Good morning, everybody. In this section, I'm going to take just a few minutes to discuss how we got all of this information. The content that you're going to hear in today's webinar was gathered from a quantitative study of 1,000 respondents from the U.S. and Canada. Now, they completed a 25-minute online survey that was fielded last September. The sample included 750 U.S. consumers and 250 Canadian consumers. The Canadians were all English speakers, and for this study, we excluded Quebec. We left our screening criteria the same as for the previous two research pieces, an age group of 26 to 59, an annual household income of $35,000 to $150,000, primary or shared responsibility for the household's financial decisions, and either had purchased life insurance through a source other than their employer or were open to that. And for this one, we added on an extra criteria, having been involved in their community within the last 12 months. The survey covered a variety of topics to ensure a clear market view and to allow a segmentation to emerge. Now let's take a look at our aggregate respondent profile. We see that we're about evenly split between men and women. Age-wise, they tended to fall into that lower 26 to 39 category, although we are spread across all three, and an average age of 39, which falls at the top of that lowest category. In the type of areas that they live in, we are again across all types, but heavily into urban and suburban respondents for this survey. The average income was $78,400, 69% tended to be married, 56% reported kids in the household, college grads 67%, and employed was 81%. Now, the breakout data for the U.S. and Canada is available, and that's hosted in the complete PowerPoint on the website in the Branding User Group resource page. Now, this study also allowed us to get a handle on the total market estimate based on our criteria. We can see that the U.S. has approximately 126 million households. Of those, 77 million include a financial decision maker who's between 25 and 59. Of those, 46 million fall within our income range of $35,000 to $150. And finally, 27 million are open to buying life insurance outside of that they get through their employer. Then when we layer on top of those statistics those that belong to and contributed to the community within the past year, we're looking at a universe of 21 million who are really in our sweet spot to do business with us. Now, we're going to move on, but remember that if you have any questions as we go along, please chat them in and we'll respond at the end. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor, who's going to introduce you to the market segments.
So we've mentioned this quite a few times, and now we're finally getting to the segments. We get to meet the market segments that are most likely to be receptive to doing business with a fraternal benefit society. Now, we sent you a preview yesterday, but we will go into the top 2 segments in a little bit more depth today. First, let's talk for a second about how we divided the market into these segments. Once the respondents had completed the survey, our market research team ran correlations and factor analysis to identify the ideal segment solution inputs. They then plotted those inputs and conducted a cluster analysis looking at variances and high-value differentiating attributes in the cluster. Then the clusters were evaluated for which segments provide the best solution for our needs. And then finally, the segments were optimized or put in order of the segments most strongly interested in fraternals, and then those were that were slightly less attractive targets. After we've met the segments, we'll go through a little more in-depth how they responded to the survey, but I would encourage everyone to get familiar with the whole PowerPoint as Jeff mentioned, that's in the branding website, because it is filled with a lot of interesting information. Now let's get to a high-level overview of each of the segments. These segments are listed in order from most to least targetable. A 5-segment solution emerged identifying the following consumer segments, listed in order, like I said, from most to least targetable and potentially valuable to AFA members. So at the top, we have passionate dabblers. So they're not currently giving a lot to their communities, but have a great desire to be doing more. They also are least likely to own insurance, but the most likely to consider fraternal benefit societies for life insurance, and also the most likely to be in the market for it soon. Under that, we have dedicated do-gooders. They're already going above and beyond and constantly seeking to do more. They are influencers and advocates. Community is definitely a priority for them, and they make an effort to devote time to it. They're more likely to go out of their way to support companies who are aligned with causes, and they're also informed, so they do a lot of research on organizations before contributing. Then we have convenience seekers. They're currently contributing at average amounts. This group would like to find an easier way to give back. They consider themselves to be social and busy and feel that they just do not have excess time to invest. They tend to look for name brands and the lowest price, but feel positively towards the care about people attributes that fraternal benefit societies offer. Then we have skeptical supporters, which tend to have a more negative view of financial services in general. While they do give some time and money, they tend to be less trusting of the effectiveness of charities and nonprofits. This group is the least likely to be in the market for life insurance and tend to be more price-driven, and they find a closer connection to their community is not such a priority for them. And then lastly, we have satisfied contributors. They're generous and are happy with their efforts. They're not seeking for ways to do more or look to companies to help them do more in their community. And they evaluate life insurance decisions almost solely based on the quality of the company and the policy. So of these 5 segments likely to view fraternals as a viable or attractive option for a life insurer, you may ask how big the segments are. You'll remember from our discussion of the methodology of the survey that the sweet spot for doing business with fraternals came out to about 21 million U.S. consumers. So this little chart here shows you of those 21 million where they kind of all sit. Convenience seekers hold about 5.5 million. Passionate dabblers make up about 4.8 million. And then we have satisfied contributors at 4.6, dedicated do-gooders at 3.4 million, and skeptical supporters at about 2.9. So let's take a look at these segments plotted on a chart of how much they are in the market for life insurance on the horizontal axis and how likely they are to buy from a fraternal benefit society on the vertical axis. We see again that these 3 same segments emerge as pretty attractive. The passionate dabblers in the best market position and dedicated do-gooders. Convenience seekers also mapping very well along them. The other two segments that landed at the bottom on both of these slides, the satisfied contributors and the skeptical supporters, are not out of the running as far as potential customers, but they're folks that you may just want to give your business card to and say, call me when you're in the market or if you're ever, interested. They're not worth a lot of effort because they're not as right for our message as some of the other segments. So Jeff, if you want to talk a little bit in depth about the passionate dabblers.
Sure. Let's meet our passionate dabblers. Due to time considerations, we're only going to take a deeper look at this top segment. They're most receptive to the fraternal message. All the other segments are described in depth in the PowerPoint that's available on the branding page. And as we've told you already, we really encourage you to read that whole report because there's lots of great data in it. Passionate dabblers tend to be open-minded. They're spontaneous givers who wish that they could do more for the community. They feel like they're doing the bare minimum and therefore like to support companies who are doing good for the world. Let's go to the next slide. Here we see that the passionate dabblers tend to skew slightly more female and is largely in the youngest 26 to 39 age bracket. 67% are married, 61% have children, so they're a little more likely to have children in the home than the aggregate. An average income of $77,000. Now, something I want to point out is that passionate dabblers tend to have less religious and fewer ties to their ethnic heritage. So perhaps these aren't the folks that you're going to see in the pews every Sunday. Maybe you only see them on Christmas and Easter. Dedicated do-gooders or satisfied contributors both performed more strongly on the religion and ethnic characteristics, but yet neither turned out to be as good a potential customer as the passionate dabbler based on our criteria. For those in religious space and ethnic societies, though, I might view these people as an unexpected addition to your market. People that are impressed by your solid business performance and giving back to the community in general, rather than something tied to a stronger religious or ethnic message. Now, on this next slide, I wanted to take us back to last week, to one of the websites that we mocked up for our fictional society, the Elbonian Pagan Society, if you'll recall. And we purposely utilized the graphics and language on this site that we did to appeal to passionate dabblers. Again, they were slightly more female, younger, open-minded, a spontaneous giver. We wanted to really write copy that got at the fact that they currently feel like they do the bare minimum, but they're making an effort to support companies that do good for the world. And then, as a reminder, you've got to be a stable, successful business first, or the rest doesn't matter. So we included their best rating here. But you look at the copy that was developed for them, and you really see that we were trying to get at that passionate dabbler market. Next, let's look at some other characteristics. Passionate dabblers feel the strongest sense of belonging with their neighborhood. And as I said, they're less likely to be involved in a religious community or a service volunteer club. They donate the least time and money, but they have a strong desire to do more. 58% say they do the bare minimum for the organizations that they support. 77% wish they could donate more money. 70% wish that they had more time. And this likely supports their drive to support companies that do work, to do the work that they don't have the time or the money to do. They say that they support companies that act in a socially responsible way at 81%, do good things for their community at 79%, or do good things for the world at 75%. Now let's take a look at some of their life insurance purchase drivers. They are partial to brand name financial institutions, but to take the edge off that, they may be slightly turned off life insurance companies in general. 31% reporting it makes it difficult to do business with them. They're willing to put their support and trust in Fraternal Benefit Society because of their help, their promise to support others. They feel that they care about the world at large, and it's the type of company I trust. So while preferring name brands could prove a barrier, the promise of a fraternal helping them achieve their desire to do more is likely driving their strong purchase interest. Now, I know that this is a lot of information, but before we move on, let's take a look at the return on innovation that these segments are projected to provide for fraternals. Now, you might ask, what is a return on innovation? It's not a revenue forecast or a return on investment calculation or a measure of client lifetime value. A return on innovation is a relative measure of the opportunity each segment represents for fraternals compared to the other segments. A tool designed to facilitate a strategic discussion and to assist the core team in prioritizing these segments for further investment. And we see with this slide that passionate dabblers with a total index score of 166 and that dedicated do-gooders are by far the highest attractive targets for fraternal benefit societies. Now, we're going to move along to market climate, and I'm going to turn it over to Taylor, but please remember that if you have any questions as we go along, chat them in, and we'll get to them at the end. Taylor?
So now that we've met the segments, we're going to take a few minutes to see how we've arrived at the data points that made up the 5 groups. To get the 5 groups, we use data points derived from the survey to group them, which Jeff talked about a little bit earlier. So let's take a few minutes to talk about some of those points and some trends that we see on average across all the groups before we segmented them. This data comes from the market climate in 3 key areas: the way that consumers view community and community involvement, the way that consumers perceive the life insurance industry, and finally, consumer perceptions of the fraternal benefit society market. When we begin to look at the community angle as a baseline, we found that consumers view communities that they belong to in several ways, but for the vast majority, they view community in terms of neighborhood, town or city, religious communities, and sports communities. This works well for fraternals with their local focus through chapters, and for some societies, their religious focus. In addition, when thinking about the geographic reach of the communities of which they are a member, most of the respondents viewed local organizations as having the most impact on their communities versus national ones. When they were asked about the personal impact of the communities that they are a member of, they then again viewed that reach as having a highly local impact. From this information, we can safely say for the respondents, most community involvement and impact is at the local level. Again, good news for fraternals. Next, we're going to look at consumer attitudes about supporting community organizations, which we found that most feel that everyone should be involved in their communities and that they wish they had more spare time or money to help out. Also, interestingly, many pointed out that they wish it was easier to support causes and organizations that are near and dear to their hearts. Now think about that for a minute in terms of the ampersand benefits that we've found that resonate with consumers around fraternal benefit societies. First and foremost, the members of the sample have and are interested in buying more life insurance. That puts them in your market as a provider of financial services. They also wish it was easier to support their causes and organizations. Now, if they bought a policy from a fraternal, just by paying their premium, they're automatically fulfilling 2 things that they've said that they want. This can also be amplified if they participate in local chapter community service efforts as well. So you can see that for many of those that are planning to buy insurance anyways, fraternals just make sense. So we're going to add another layer onto the consumer's view of community. We're going to look at the way they view life insurance companies. We ask consumers to rate the importance of the characteristics that you see on this slide when considering a purchase. Now for our sample, clearly business basics are top priority. They want to do business with a company that they trust, who has good products at a competitive price and provides excellent consumer service. This echoes what we discussed last week. In order for the brand to work for you, consumers have to view you as a good insurance company first. The community service and fraternal activities are viewed as a nice to have, but you have to be a financially strong company with good products and service first. Also, as an interesting aside, because they fall way down the list, I would take note of 2 additional items and consider them when thinking about your society. In our survey, 69% have modernized the way they do business, not stuck in their old ways. As important and further down the list, 45% view sells their products directly to consumers online without any agents involved as important. Now again, these are just things to keep in mind when thinking about the future. These are good lessons for any life insurer to ponder, not just fraternals. We also took a look at consumers who were in the market for life insurance and once understanding the definition, said that they were likely to buy from a fraternal. This slide shows some of the feelings of this group. We found that these targets are more likely than non-targets to have a sense of wanting to do more, but not feeling like they have the time, wishing there was maybe an easier way to contribute. Another interesting attribute of this group that is not shown on this slide is that we found that the market for life insurance among those interested in purchasing from a fraternal benefit society skew younger relative to those not interested in doing so. And we view this as a very positive sign. We also found that these targets are more likely than non-targets to prefer socially responsible companies and support ones that make it easy to contribute. And they believe that family and friends influence the organizations that they support. In addition, these same targets tend to be more socially and personally responsible than non-targets, participating in recycling or helping others and going to events. They tend to enjoy going to parks and community facilities and often recommend products and services to their family and friends. They often support cultural events. They consider themselves to be very social, and they feel they have strong ties to their ethnic heritage. So Jeff, if you want to talk a little bit about the campaign evaluation.
Sure. As we close the webinar out, or we come towards the close here, we wanted to take some time to discuss how the consumers viewed our various creative concepts that Maddox Douglas developed. Now, remember, many of you participated in voting on 6 creative concepts in Arizona at the 2017 Alliance annual meeting. The concept that won among the participants in our research at the meeting was the ampersand. And so let's take a look at see what the consumers said about that. The sample was asked to evaluate all the creative concepts in 3 ways. These were their likelihood to investigate based on the ad, the believability of the ad, and finally, what type of person did they think would be interested in the financial products from this type of company? Once again, Plan Ahead, or the ampersand, was the best performer. It's significantly more relatable, and that means that they said that this message would appeal to someone like me, and significantly more likely to inspire further investigation than all the other ads. Now you remember Fuel Care was one of the ads. That came in last, so that constantly underperformed, and so it was eliminated. With its clear and direct message, the Plan Ahead and Give Back, or the ampersand, strikes a positive chord with roughly 2/3 of consumers. Strong believability and relatability translate into higher desire to find out more. We see that the slightly lower scores across the board from the Canadian sample on the ampersand, but the overall ranking of those concepts did not change. So they were in the same order, just slightly less enthusiastic about them. As a result of our research here, we found that some of the other concepts and messages performed well also, but not as well as the ampersand. So we tried to incorporate these messages into different versions that followed that ampersand theme. So if you've been through all of the brand assets that are available, you've seen that a different kind, which also performed well and strongly in the research, and protection for yours, providing for others, were incorporated into the ampersand theme, and they're available for you in the final versions on the branding website. And don't forget that you can get the native files of these through the Dropbox. Just send me an email if you still need access. So with this webinar, we bring to a close our initial planned webinars, and we're going to poll you in just a minute to see what type of education you're interested in. But please don't forget that we are planning an in-person, face-to-face branding workshop at Symposium on May 22nd, and registration will open for that in February. And if you have any suggestions for what we should include in that, please send them to me or send them to Taylor, and we'll provide that feedback to Maddox Douglas as they plan the session. And with that, I think we'll go to a poll.
So we just want to get some feedback from you about what some future branding education might cover, things that you're interested in learning more about. So we have a couple different options on the screen here. We're going to give everyone a couple minutes to respond what future branding education should cover. If you're really interested in the data, that you love numbers, you want to do a deep dive in that, more about the 5 segments, how to incorporate the new language into your ads, your social media, on your website, help with having your agents understand more about the research, or you're interested in marketing basics if you're looking for help with graphic design or making updates to your website. Another option would be how you might be able to partner with other societies as a sort of team effort. That could be something we could delve a little bit into, or if you're interested in all of the above on there. We just want to get an idea of some of the things that you're looking for to help us plan future education. So I'm going to give everyone just a minute there. And while you're answering this poll, before we head into the Q&A, I just want to make sure to unmute Joe Nadi, who is on the line to help answer some questions as well. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute him, and then give everyone just another second here to respond. I just want to see kind of where everyone's falling on our poll here. So that's great. So we will definitely take this feedback and work that into some of our upcoming education. So thank you all for responding to that. If there's any other topics regarding the branding, feel free to include those in the little follow-up survey that we're going to do, or you can feel free to email those to us as well. And so with that, I want to open it up to Q&A. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and use the chat feature on the computer. We've had a couple that have come in, but we definitely have some time to answer some questions. So the first question that we've received is, how can my agents distinguish passionate dabblers from satisfied contributors? Is there criteria we can use or key questions to ask?
Okay. That is something that we're working on right now, and we will probably have more to reveal to you at the face-to-face workshop at Symposium. We're working on a project right now with Maddox Douglas about figuring out how to use a script to put people into different groups and be sure that then you can speak to them in a way that they understand. So more to come on that, but it's something that we're working on right now.
Okay, and another question that has come in is going back to the descriptions of the segments. I'm just going to pull that slide back up. Are you saying that all 5 of these are viable? How do we decide which group to go after, especially those of us with a religious or ethnic common bond? And I would put that question to either Joe or Jeff.
With that, what I would say, is that, again, the top two groups, the dedicated do-gooders and the passionate dabblers, are most likely to respond to the message. With a religious or ethnic common bond, I think it's not so much, obviously changing who you are. It's changing the way you talk to them. So once we get this tool or these scripts ready for your agents, and they can determine, if they're dealing with a passionate dabbler, they really just kind of change the pitch. A dedicated do-getter is much more receptive to an ethnic common bond or a religious common bond than a passionate dabbler. So with a dabbler, they might talk about, we've worked with these food pantries, we've done X, Y, or Z in the community, and, gloss over the fact that you also are supporting scholarships for Catholic schools or whatever. So it's really just kind of changing that up for your agents. And again, we can dig more into that. We're working with Maddox Douglas continually on a way for agents to be able to do better with that.
This is Joe. If I could just add a couple points to that. The messages that were created, the message, the words that we're using and the visuals, the ampersand, those will appeal to all five of these groups. At some level, they will appeal to all five of these groups, from passionate dabblers down to the satisfied contributors. The trick is going to be to separate the top ones, the most likely to buy, from the bottom ones. As Jeff mentioned, we're trying to work on a script or a questionnaire or something to help you and your field reps do that. But, I think it would be an agent who's been in the field for some time with some experience can probably pick out a skeptical supporter and a satisfied contributor. I've heard so many fraternals tell me, well, yeah, we know who our market is. They're Catholic. All Catholics are our market, or all Croatians, or all women, or whatever the bond is. Everybody in that group. And the fact of the matter is, that's not the case at all. That's not the case at all. In fact, from what we're hearing, what we're learning from this research, the most faithful Catholics may not be your best prospects. It may be those on the periphery of the faith who want to get more involved, and this is an easy way to do it and support it. So there are delineations between your existing, or what you think your existing market is, and your existing bond is, that we need to drill down to, so that your field reps and your marketing messages and your social media activity hits the folks, and you invest the time in talking to the folks who are the most likely to purchase, and you can tell the skeptical supporters or the satisfied contributors, here's my business card. When you're interested in talking about financial services, give me a call. We'll be there to help you. But you can stop wasting time there. That's what we're trying to drill down to with all this, is that you can focus your energies on the prospects that are most likely to buy, but that our messages appeal to all those folks in those groups to some level, and hopefully they will attract the folks at the two top tiers, the passionate dabblers and the dedicated do-gooders, to come to you with thoughts, energy, and a built-in appeal to the model we're offering.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Another question that we've had come through is, can you please give us an idea of what the May 22nd workshop will address and who the speakers will be?
We're working with Maddox Douglas on that, and so they will have speakers there. And honestly, we have a conference call with them scheduled next week. So we will get that information out to you as soon as we brainstorm what you want. And again, if you have suggestions of what you would like to see on that, send them to me, send them to Taylor, send them to Joe, send them to Allison, and we can relay them and make sure that, as we build the curriculum for that half-day workshop, that we are covering the stuff that you want. So please share with us, and we will make sure that gets passed along and considered as we develop that workshop.
I also think to point out, because that workshop is taking place during our spring symposium, I think that would be a really excellent opportunity for sort of some peer learning as well. So I pulled up this poll question that we asked about kind of the education that people are looking for, and there's definitely some clear winners in that. And so there's also, some solidarity with people who are on this webinar, so everyone's kind of in a similar place. So I definitely would urge you to attend that in-person workshop. We are, as Jeff mentioned, we are still developing the content for that, but I do think there is something to be said for that face-to-face aspect, and it would be a really excellent time to bounce ideas off of each other and learning more about how you can work with each other as well. So we've had a couple more questions come in. Another one is, can we share the segment research with our agent sales force?
Yes, you by supporting the branding program, you bought this, so this is yours to share as you like. Something that we are going to be putting together is one of the things that we had initially planned was a workshop like or a webinar like this for agents, and we're going to be presenting at NAFIC and doing a webinar for them. So, if when you talk to your agents you have any aha or light bulb moments, please share with us. Share the kind of thing that you would like for your agents with us so that we can, again, design what you're going to find helpful. I know that Joe is going to be speaking at the NAFIC meeting, and I don't know if he has anything more to say on this topic.
Other than an emphatic yes, of course you can share it with your field reps. These are the people that are going to get most out of it. They're the ones that need to spread the message to the prospective members. Absolutely. That's why we did this. We don't want this to stop in the corner office. We want this to drill down through your entire organization.
Great, thank you. We have just a couple more minutes left. If there are any other questions, go ahead and chat those in. Okay, well, it looks like we don't have any additional questions coming in, but if you have any questions that you think of later, feel free to reach out. Jeff Mitchell's email is on the screen there, so you can feel free to email him. And so I just want to thank everyone for participating. We're going to launch a very brief survey just to get your feedback about how we did on this morning's webinar. So thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great day.